Okay. All right, welcome. I'm just going to wait till the top of the hour as people join in, and then I'll get started. Thanks for your patience. All right. I have it right about 9 o'clock. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to my AMA, my Ask Me Anything. I do these sessions monthly. And for those of you that have tried to log in the last session, we had technical problems. So I appreciate your patience and glad you are back. Hopefully we figured those out for going forward. At any rate, this is really the time I set aside to be able to interact, ask questions with folks that want to get my advice or perspective, etc. I have found that as I've taken on more and more responsibility in my career and my life, I don't have as much time to have one-on-one conversations with everyone like I'd like. So I decided to carve out these hours to give me a chance to actually do just that. Because I've also found that many people have some of the same questions and can learn from what others are querying about and discussions. So this is my opportunity that I just provide to try to share and give back to help more and more people achieve their aspirations. Because right now, that's my focus. All right, so let's dive right into this. And I've got the questions written down, so I'll keep looking off screen to read them. But let's start with the first one. First one, based on your vast experience leading companies and serving as chief marketing officer, what basic advice or principles can you share with startups looking to scale to at least $100 million a year in revenue? Okay, so just a small little question, but let me just talk about three. There's a bunch, obviously, but let me talk about the ones that tend to really trip founders up. So number one, realize that as you're building your company, many times the people that you bring onto the company early on, they are now carrying jobs that they've never carried before, meaning at scale, at size, etc. Because as you grow, they're also growing with their experience. So it's important that you have a balance, that you continue to bring on team members that have actually done more than you have done so far as a company, so that you can gain from their experience and their overall leadership background, etc. Second, do not fall in love with your product. And I use product in the generic sense. Product can be service, can be offering, whatever it might be. But don't fall in love with that. Because many, especially founders and founding teams, they do. My gosh, they built the product from scratch and people love it and it's terrific and the product is everything. No. You want the market. You want your target market, your target customers to be your everything. Because when you fall in love with the market, then you're making sure that everything you do is in service of that customer. And that may mean that you may need to change the product, that you may need to make some alterations in terms of how you provide service or who does what, all those things. When you fall in love with your product, it can blind you to what the market actually needs. So fall in love with the product, with the market rather, not with the product. And third, manage your money. Great companies with great ideas and terrific offerings fail every day because they flat out run out of money. So those are the three things I'd say to put at the top of your priority list. All right, next. What advice would you give your 21-year-old self before embarking on your journey to become CEO? First, I tell myself, don't take yourself so seriously. I mean, when I came out of college and headed into the workforce, I was ready, right? I had aspirations, I was serious, I was this, and everything that happened was either, amazing or terrible, or, I took it all very personally, everything, because I was just taking myself so seriously. So number one, don't take yourself so seriously. Everybody's human, everybody makes mistakes, right? Nobody's perfect and nobody expects you to be. Two, things are, I hinted at this a minute ago, but things are never as good as they appear, but they're also never as bad as they appear. So realizing that could have stopped me from taking so many ups and downs emotionally as things happened throughout my early career. And third, I'd say listen and learn from everyone. Everyone. I like to say that great advice and perspective falls from the sky. You just have to listen for it. But just because you're listening and learning doesn't mean that you need to actually do what other people tell you to do. Listen, learn, but then make your decisions based upon your priorities, your values, your overall intentions. All right, next. Top tips to help one increase their confidence in sales. Well, first of all, love questions around sales because I believe everybody should do a stint in sales. To this day, I leverage more of the skills and experience I gained as a salesperson selling computers way back when than probably any other role or even education I've had. So when you say how to build confidence, number one, realize you are going to get way more no's than you get yeses. You are. So don't take all of those personally. Remember I talked about earlier, don't take yourself so seriously. If you're not getting no's, it means you're not asking for the order often enough. So you should be striving to get 10, 15 no's. If you're not getting 10, 15 no's before you get yeses, then you're not asking enough. So how to build your confidence? Realize you're going to get no's. That's okay. And think about your job, not so much as, yes, you're trying to sell this product or service or offering, whatever it happens to be. Yes, you are trying to do that. But what you're really trying to do is solve customer problems with the capabilities that your company brings. So if you focus on solving their problems, and if you get them to believe and embrace the fact that that's why you're there and that's what you're doing, right? Then it becomes a much better relationship that you can build. And when you have good relationships, it just makes everything easier. The other thing to do is talk to people who've been selling for a long time. Listen and learn from them. Hear their harrowing experiences and when they failed and everything else, right? It tends to make you feel a little better because you realize that, hey, this is hard, but that's okay. It's still doable. All right, next one. A little bit lengthy, so bear with me. Is a mid-career elite MBA worth it to rise to the top as a business leader as you work on getting unstuck and positioning yourself for success? I would be seeking a career pivot, possibly private equity, venture capital, or senior role as social impact driven company. For someone with 20 years of experience in Fortune 100 companies and founding startups, I highly value and frankly enjoy constantly learning and growing. The big missing gap and struggle I find myself with is access to world-class network and authentic, deep, cultivated relationships because I haven't prioritized the net worth part of your network as your net worth equation. My purpose is crystal clear. Now at 42, I want to unabashedly focus on building wealth so I can drive bigger and greater impact in the world and humanity. Okay, yes, long question. So, mid-career MBAs can be worth it if you're trying to pivot. Sometimes you need to go have a reason and also a credential to be able to move from one part of business or career into another without having to start over again. So MBA doing that can absolutely be a way of making a pivot. Now, with regards to building network, it's never too late to start, but it's all about building relationships. There is not one magic step to suddenly have a great network. Can you build it with classmates when you go get your MBA? The answer is absolutely. But you have to work on building relationships. It's not just the fact that you sat in class with them, which is going to now make them part of your great network. But it's also not just MBA. You can be building your network with everyone, neighbors, people at the place that you worship, people at the gym, right? I mean, you interact with people often. It's all about taking an interest in them, showing that you have an interest in them, and building a relationship. And the best way I've found to build relationships is by giving or offering something of yourself. Figure out how you can help people, because then you have a genuine way of getting to know each other. I talk a lot about this in my book, Unapologetically Ambitious. So if you want some more tips and ideas, you can definitely look at that. But that's been my key to building a network, has really been by offering to help and be of service to others. All right, next. Slide up here. As a CEO, you lead multiple disciplines. How do you develop confidence in leading different disciplines? This is a great question because frankly, even as I was moving up the ladder and you take on roles and responsibilities, there are many times I had a responsibility for something that I never done before. But here's the key. Your job as a leader is not to actually do the specific tasks tied to that job. Your job is to make sure that you have the right team in place that can actually get the job done, and that the team is motivated, incented, is clear on their objectives and on the strategy, right? That is your job. So you can absolutely manage, lead, motivate people, encourage people in areas that you aren't an expert in. When I became CEO, I'd never led an engineering team. Well, that's a big part of the company and the team. So what did I do? I didn't go out and get an engineering degree, right? No, I made sure I hired good people. And then I spent time talking to people who had actually managed teams that they had not had that discipline in terms of their overall background to find out, how did you do it, right? What worked, what didn't work. I'm a big believer in learning from others. And I found that when you ask people in the right way, people love to talk about themselves and talk about what they've done. So a lot of times they're willing to share. So bottom line, realize your job is not to actually do the work. Your job is to make sure the work gets done as effectively, as efficiently, and in the best way possible, which means it's really all about building, motivated, and incenting your team. How do you know when to quit? Okay, that's a very broad question. So I'm a big believer that quitting is kind of the last resort. So try to figure out, what are the issues that are happening that are making you think about quitting? And are they, number one, are they real? Sometimes there are issues out there that feel very real, but when you dig into them, they really aren't. Find out if there's other ways to address it. Figure out, what are the circumstances that are causing you to feel how you feel. And then if you feel you really can't make a change and you can't impact them, right, then maybe that's the time to quit. Or if you're in an environment that's toxic or hostile, or frankly is affecting your health, right, that's different. Then no, you don't want to be putting yourself in that kind of situation. But I do find that people, in my opinion, tend to quit too fast. And when they quit too fast, they're running from something. I'm not happy. I don't like what's happening. I'm not moving. I feel stuck, whatever it is. And so they quit and leave what they're doing and go do something else. But the problem is, they were running from the problem. They weren't running to a great opportunity. So a lot of times they don't even end up in a much better situation. So don't run from a problem. Try to fix it first. And if you can't fix it, hang in there and think about, what do you actually want? What would be ideal? What would fit within your plans and your desires and your aspirations? And then go find that, so that you run to something great versus knee-jerk run from something into something else just because you need another job. Okay, next. Just going through Unapologetically Ambitious. Well, thank you for reading the book. Exceptional read, truly inspiring. I know this book probably just shares one part of your life. Was being ambitious stressful? And if so, how did you thrive? Was it stressful? Yeah, it was definitely stressful at times. I'd love to say, oh yeah, no stress, everything was really easy. It wasn't. It was really hard. And that's why I wrote the book. Because frankly, I think too many people who have achieved significant things in their lives, they make it look too easy. And then when others are looking and they're saying, gosh, well, it was easy for them, so if it's hard for me, I must not be cut out for this. And you know what? It's not true. It's hard for everybody. People just don't tell you. So I'm telling you, it's hard and it's stressful. Absolutely. So if you're feeling all those things, that is absolutely normal. Now, how do you thrive in that environment? You need to manage your stress. Make sure that all these feelings don't overcome you, right? So when you're feeling stressed, figure out for yourself, how do you deal with stress? And everybody deals with it differently. So I can't give you, here's the formula for managing stress, because frankly, stress is a feeling inside. And what causes stress for one person is very different from what causes stress for another. But the key is, understand what causes you stress, figure out how you might be able to mitigate that, and then figure out how you can actually handle it. All right, so I'll give you an example. One of the things that causes me stress is when I have a number of outstanding things to get done, and I don't really have a crystal plan on how I'm going to get them done. So as a result, they're just hanging there. And when they're hanging there, I feel stressed. And as a result, I'm just not as good, right, at what I'm doing. So I find for me, what I've got to do is write stuff down And it really is. Okay, what do I have to do? I make my list, right? I write it down. I figure out when I'm going to do it. I put together an outline of what needs to be done. I find somebody to take over, whatever happens to be. But for me, writing things down and dimensionalizing it helps reduce that level of stress of things just hanging. I need to have a plan. So figure out what causes you stress and then how you mitigate it, what makes it work for you, and learn to mitigate. Because key is, if you're pushing yourself professionally, personally, whatever, you're going to have stress. It's just how it works. So the sooner you learn how to deal with it, how to manage it, the better off you'll be in your career and frankly in life in general. Next part of the question is, did you have any regrets or would you do anything differently? I get that question a lot. Shellye, what would you do differently if you could? And I actually have a very philosophical response to that. I am overall happy with my life and with where I am in my life. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have hardships and challenges and tragedies and all those things. Yes, I lived through all of that. Would it have been better not to have those things? The answer is yes. But I firmly believe that who I am and where I am is a result of actually living through all of it. So I wouldn't change a thing because I know if I changed something, smoothed all the rough things, right? Made everything easy, etc., I wouldn't be where I am today. I'd be someplace different because I believe that one step impacts the next step. So I wouldn't change anything. All right, next one. Looking back, if you had to pick what were the few critical moments in your life that had the biggest impact on you as a person, and where you were going, why were they critical? Okay, making sure I understood the question. So if I had to pick a few critical moments in my life that had the biggest impact, why were they critical? Um, Biggest impact. Gosh, I've had a lot of things impact me. One was and I talk about this in the book, when I got a summer job working at IBM, literally substituting for secretaries going on vacation. And this is so far in the early 80s that they were called secretaries, not assistants. And I got some great advice, which was, hey, while you're here, you should talk to people about what they do since you want to go into business. And so I did. I reached out to people. I literally cold called people based upon the directory of interesting job titles and started talking to them. And so I learned a couple things. One, people like to talk about themselves, and they would actually respond if you reached out in a very, polite way. Two, I learned a lot about just business and roles and things like that, which just helped me shape what I wanted to do. Another thing that was biggest impact was choosing the man I chose to marry. Marrying Scotty Scott was one of the most important decisions I made and absolutely critical to my success. He was an amazing partner, cheerleader, just everything. Other things was the decision to be willing to move. I moved around a lot in my career, and it gave me the opportunity to have experiences in the US, overseas, and move up fairly quickly. So those are a few, but there's a lot of them, and you can read more about them in the book. How do you suggest folks go about identifying and exploring different fields or roles than the one they're currently in to expose themselves and enable the opportunity of having a dynamic career path? I believe in talking to people. If you spend time trying to do all of the different roles, then you're going to spend a lot of time at a very lateral level. So instead of doing everything, to quote, experience it, talk to people who are doing the jobs. And that can give you a lot of insight on what the role is, what they find exciting, what they're learning from it, what have you. And then that can inform whether or not you actually want to try that role out or not try the role out. So talk to people in roles to learn what they're all about. Next, how do you strategize bringing in major cultural changes from passive reactive mindset to a proactive ownership drive mindset? Yeah, this is a big one. A lot of companies are going through, cultural evolution, right? Trying to adopt, change, evolve the overall culture. And it's hard. Cultures are deeply embedded. So when you're trying to make a change to the culture, first realize it's a journey. It's not just a step. So no, there aren't just do these three things and boom, right? It happens. No, no, no. It is a journey. And it starts with purpose. People have to understand why. Why should I behave the way you want me to behave? Because when you think about it, what culture really boils down to is how people behave. How people behave in the group, in the team, and however they come together. Are they responsive? How do they communicate? What do they share? I mean, all those things, it's all about how they behave. So if you want them to change behavior, then they have to understand why. Why do they need to change? What's in it for the company? But more importantly, what's in it for them? So you have to really take time to be able to articulate the purpose. Here's what we're doing and here's why. And here's how this affects the success of a business, the success of your business unit, and you personally. And then you've got to not only communicate that over and over and over and over again, but you also have to take touch points to see how people are adapting. And you have to be willing to do what's necessary to make sure that you're reinforcing. So when you see the behavior you want, you've got to recognize it, cheer it, spotlight it, so people see, oh, right, here's where the good stuff happens. And when behavior that is antithetical to that is happening, then you've got to make sure that you actually tamp that down and let people know that that is not what's expected. So evolving a culture takes proactive leadership and management of the message, of the communications, and then of overall behaviors. Now, how do you embody others to then not only embrace it, but I think the word was to take ownership, be proactive, etc. People do what they feel is being rewarded, what they feel is being recognized. So when you start recognizing people that are showing that ownership, showing the proactivity, then others are going to try to emulate that behavior. So much of this comes down to how you communicate, what you highlight, what you reference. And oh, by the way, it can't be something that's always off to the side, meaning business as usual, business as usual. Oh, let me talk about something good somebody did. You've got to build it in to the strategy itself, so that whenever you're talking about business, about results, about strategy, that's always part and parcel. So people understand where the culture is going, how they play a role, and how it fits into everything they're doing. Pardon me. Okay, next one. How do you get a deserved promotion when promotion criteria keeps changing? Okay, this is a good one. So, not everybody's a good manager or a good leader. And when the criteria keeps changing, that's a sign that somebody just isn't really good, right, at what they do. So when that happens, you need to take the lead. And when I say you need to take the lead, you need to actually ask, okay, here's the job I want. Here's what you've said is their criteria. Write it down. Write it down. So that when you have the next conversation, which, oh, by the way, should not be a year, you should be having conversations about the criteria for the promotion at least once a quarter with your boss. And don't make it formal. My apologies. Okay, don't make it formal. Don't say, I want to schedule a meeting to talk about my promotion. Just quarterly, and you put it on your own calendar. When you're having a one-on-one, you just bring it up. And the way you bring it up is you say, oh, I just want to do a quick checkpoint. When we talked last, you said, in order for me to be ready and prepared for the next promotion, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Well, I've now done this against X. I've done that against Y. Does that actually meet your expectations, right? What you want to do is to manage the process. And it gives them a chance, frankly, to both see that you are paying attention, that you know what the criteria is, that you're working toward it, and that you're actually ticking things off. It's harder for them when you do that to then keep changing criteria. Because then you can call them on it. So when they say, oh, but actually, I know I told you X, Y, and Z, but A, B, and C are important too. And you can say, well, excuse me, you didn't mention A, B, and C before. So has the job itself changed? Right? So you can just have the conversation. Now, none of this is in an in-your-face, right, attitude-oriented way. These conversations are always conversations where you're just trying to clarify, right? That way people don't feel that you are abrasive, right? All those things, which especially if you're a woman or a person of color, that's one of the biggest issues. So instead of walking in to say, you said X, I did Y, right? No, what you want to do is, in our last conversation, here's what you said, here's what I've done. Does this meet your expectations? Is there something else you think I need to do? And that way you're managing it all the way through. So when the year is up, or whatever that time frame is, it is not a conversation that you're having for the first time. It's one that you've now built all the way up. And in my experience, it's harder for them to change criteria when you've done that. The other thing is, remember, yes, you have a direct manager, but there are other leaders out there in organizations. Build relationships with them too. And it's fine to get their advice. And advice, can be something like, I'm talking to my manager about XYZ role. He's given me some criteria. I'd love your advice on whether or not you think there's any other criteria necessary. Why do you do that? Because now you're starting to build support beyond just your own manager for what it is that you're doing. And you're getting other people engaged, which again makes it harder to change criteria. Ooh, sorry about that. All right. So that's that one. Next, I have my Q3 goals check-in meeting this week. Oh, this is a great one to follow the last one. We review my goals and the progress I've made during the previous quarter. Do you have any tips for how to guide this discussion? Also, part of the performance planning document we complete at the beginning of the year is career objectives. You indicate your current role and your next role. I put in my next role's title. Okay, so that's it. Yes, my advice is realize that these are really your meetings. And when I say your meetings, meaning it's about your performance. It's about your next career role. So when you go in, you should be driving the conversation. I'm sure you've written something down, you've shared it with them in advance. So when you come in, you should come in and share. Here's what I've done, right? As you can see, but get feedback. And here's where you have to make yourself vulnerable. I like to say, if you have aspirations and you're ambitious, then being vulnerable is kind of the flip side of that coin. Because you want to know where there are issues. So you have to ask. Because one of the things I've found is people don't like giving other people feedback. It's uncomfortable to tell somebody they're not very good. And so people tend to not be as direct as they should be. Well, if you don't know where the concerns are, you can't fix them. So you don't want them, easing up on you in terms of giving you feedback. So, for instance, if you put down what you want your next title to be or next role to be, you should ask your boss to say, here's what I want my next job to be, my next role to be. First of all, do you think that is the right career goal? Is it the right next step for me? Would you support me, right, in that? What else do you need to see, right? If the answer is, ooh, right, not sure, maybe eventually, if they're doing some kind of hedging, then you want to find out, well, what other experiences do you think I need to be able to get this role and do a good job in this role, right? What else do you want to see? You actually want to ask the questions. And by the way, getting anything other than oh, yes, you're absolutely ready for the job is a good thing. Because as I said, if you don't ask, you don't know. And if you don't know what the issues are, or you don't know where you should focus, or what skills, experience, whatever it might be, then you can't address it. And then you get stuck. So many people get stuck and they don't know why they're stuck. The best way to understand why you're stuck is to actually ask. right? What does he need to see from me to be able to do blah or blah or blah? You actually want real feedback. So take the deep breath and ask the question. And when you get, quote, negative feedback, don't take it as an indictment. It's all about learning. Remember I said in an earlier question, nobody knows everything. Nobody's good at everything. All right. So it's okay to be told what's not good or what's not bad. It's actually better because now you know, right, what it is and can do something about it. So go in and think of these sessions as sessions that give you input and give you knowledge so that you can better plan, better strategize, better execute to get what you want going forward. All right. Next one. The question is, where were you at the age of 30? Okay. Let's see. At the age of 30, I lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was married. I had 2 elementary school kids. I was a business unit exec for IBM. Where else? Where was I at the age of 30? I was serving on a nonprofit board by that time, and I was exhausted. Those are all the things that I remember in terms of age of 30. Okay. Dear Shellye, thank you for this opportunity to gain valuable insights. I really appreciate it. I always look forward to AMA sessions. I have 3 questions. All right, we'll take them one at a time. How do you deal with difficult people to get things done? I'm currently working on a project where we've hired consultants. The choice of the consultants was not, the choice of consultants was committed prior to me joining the team. Now we have a problem because, to be frank, we made a mistake in our selection. They're not the right fit. It's now crunch time, and I'm having trouble getting the consultants to meet our expectations, and I may end up having to redo the work, which defeats the whole purpose of hiring the consultants. What's worse, replacing them is not feasible. We're in too deep. Any advice? Okay. Unfortunately, this happens a lot. So first of all, the consultants. The consulting organization wants good, happy clients because so much of consulting is referral. It's word of mouth referral. So that's important. If you are not happy, right, then it's important to actually have a conversation with the consultants. And when I say consultants, I'm not talking about people that are actually working on the team. I'm talking about the person who's responsible for the success of this client engagement. So you need to find out who is actually accountable for the success of this client engagement. Every consulting firm has that person. That is the person you need to meet with and talk to. Now, the key here is you can't go back and change things. So spending a whole lot of time talking about what didn't happen and what didn't work, and it actually is defeatist because it just makes them defensive. You don't get anything done, and it's not going to accomplish anything. So instead of that, when you meet, the conversation you want to have is right now, this project is not on track to be a success. Full stop. I need it to be a success, and you need it to be a success. So we need to come together on how we can salvage the situation that we're in. So start from where you are. Don't spend a lot of time looking backwards because that's a waste of time and energy. It's all about where you go from here. And what you want to do is to have them want to work with you on this versus just be the blame game. Because otherwise that's what happens, right? The project will finish, it'll be a failure. The consultant will be spending time talking to management about how the management team, you guys, didn't know what you were doing and therefore they weren't able to save you. You'll spend time talking about how bad the consultant was. And bottom line is upper management will look and just say the whole thing was a disaster and you all get painted with a bad brush. So that never works. So instead, figure out what can be done at this point to go forward. And while you may not be able to make it a success, at least make it better than where it is today. But that's what it requires. And pulling in the right people to have that kind of conversation. But start from where you are and just say between now and whatever that date is, what can we do to salvage, right, the situation of where we are and make this a team effort because it's in both your interests. And that's what's important to share. Next, Second question was, Shellye, you spoke about doing research to learn more about the roles you wanted, i.e. to become a CEO. Did you have curious career conversations? Would you be able to share ideas and tips on how I can have such conversations? I'm quite shy and don't know how to ask the right questions. You know, the key is, I find if you ask people in the right way, most people want to be helpful. And people actually like to talk about themselves and what they've done. So it's not as hard as you think. The hardest part is getting over the fear of just asking in the first place. That's the hardest part. And so getting over that fear just requires practice. So start small. And when I say start small, I'm amazed at how many people don't know, for instance, who their neighbors are or what they do, or what people that they play soccer with on the weekends, what they do, right? So start asking people that are easy, people that you touch and you just have never had that kind of conversation. Ask them about what they do and what their career path. So what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Really? How did you get into that? Right? Just, it's questions that start to pull more details, right? What made you pick that field? Oh, what did you do before that set you up for this? Where did you get started, right? Those are all the kinds of questions to ask to try to understand somebody's career path. So those are the kinds of things you can do. So start small, start easy, start with people that you already touch. And then once you realize that it's not that hard and it's not as scary as it seems, then you're armed and have more confidence to be able to actually approach others who may not be as close, right, to the overall circle that you're in. And you can reach out to people to get introductions. For instance, I'm making it up. Let's say what you're interested in understanding is how someone got to, the CTO level, and you may not know any CTOs. Well, that's okay. But you'd be surprised what other people know. So now just start making that part of your conversations. You talk to people, make it your, I call it an, oh, by the way question. Oh, by the way, I'm really starting to do some research into this whole chief technology officer, right? Do you happen to know the chief technology officer at your company? Or, at any other company that you might be able to introduce me to? You'd be amazed, through leveraging not just your network, but the network of your relationships. Typically, you can get yourself someplace and get those kind of intros so that you can then have the conversation. By the way, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, the next one. How did you manage time at work to be productive and efficient? You spoke about work-life integration in your book, Unapologetically Ambitious. At work, I realized that I spend the bulk of my time attending meetings and replying to emails, that I hardly have any time to actually do my real work, which is research. And this is causing me to work longer hours than I would like, and stress, irregular sleep, etc. All right, so the first thing is, one of the best pieces of advice I got, which I frankly didn't even understand at the time I got it, was control your calendar. And I was like, how am I going to control my calendar, right? Everybody, I'm just a peon, and everybody else controls my calendar. I get invited to meetings, I get emails, I get this, right? Everybody controls my calendar. I don't control it. What are you talking about? Well, it turns out, even with all that going on, you actually can control your calendar to a certain extent. So meetings, yes, you have to attend those. Pardon me. But make sure that everything you get invited to, you really need to attend. Sometimes people are courteous, and in being courteous, they include wide groups of people in these meetings. So if you don't think you need to attend, reach out to the meeting organizer to say, hey, I saw this meeting on the calendar. Do you really need me? I've got some other priorities that I'm trying to do, and I'm happy to sync up with you afterwards, or blah, blah, blah. So if there is one that you don't think that you actually need to be in, you can always ask, right? The question. Sometimes people include broader groups that are absolutely required for the discussion itself. Second, email. Don't do email continuously. A lot of times people sit down their computer and the first thing they do is to look at email. Email will suck you in. And by spending all your time on email, you're basically abdicating control of your calendar. Because by definition, you're saying whoever is reaching out to you is more important than the work that you have in front of you. Much better to batch time on email. to say, okay, I'm going to do email, look at your calendar, put it on the calendar. I'm going to do email from 10:30 to 11:30 when I have a break. I'm going to block off whatever, 1 to 3 to work on my project. And then I'm going to put you literally control the calendar, put time blocks, and then be more disciplined about what you do with that time. And you'd be surprised. We lose a lot of time in the switching, right? The switching where we're doing work, we get an email, we get a phone call, it's the switching that causes us to lose a lot of time because our focus shifts every time. Whereas if we have dedicated time to spend an hour on something, you can actually get a lot more done than if within that same 2-hour period, you're doing multiple things at the same time. So try to control your calendar and batch, right, your work effort. That I found to be very helpful. And then make sure that what you're doing is actually important and that you're the best person to do it. And if you're not, then find the best person that is. All right. Those are the questions that I got in advance. And I'm looking at the chat and I don't see any across the chat. So with that, I will say thank you very much for participating. Feel free to follow me online, Instagram, LinkedIn. I try to share a lot of career advice and perspectives. This period of my life I call my impact and inspiration period. So I'm trying very hard to impact and inspire others so that more people can achieve their overall objectives. And check me out, Shellye.com, Shellye, don't forget the E.com. And I look forward to connecting with you the next time. Have a great day, everybody. Bye. Oh, I'm just getting a note asking if I'm going to save this video. Yes, I put all of my AMA sessions up on YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll get them. I'll type that in. There you go. All right. Bye, everybody.